Today is Wednesday, February 17th, Ash Wednesday on the church calendar. We come together to be a bridge for Christ and a beacon of His love. We come together as a community of faith to begin this season of Lent when Jesus says, "Come and follow me," and shows us what that means. This Lent, we will enter into a season of reflection and prayers for healing for ourselves and our world, for Christ calls us to be participants in His redeeming work. As so often happens in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus has been praying. Jesus prayed after his baptism. Jesus prayed after healing people of many diseases. Jesus prayed before calling the 12 disciples. And now Jesus prays before he has a conversation with the disciples, inviting them to see him more accurately. Our scripture today comes from the Gospel of Luke from chapter 9, beginning at verse 18. Once when Jesus was praying alone with only the disciples near him, he asked them, "Who do the crowds say that I am?" They answered, "John the Baptist, but others say Elijah, and still others that one of the ancient prophets has arisen." Jesus said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered, "The Messiah of God." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Who do you say I am? It is not an easy question to answer. It's not an easy question for the disciples because they have an understanding of God's Messiah as a king who's supposed to come back and rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, who's supposed to defeat the enemies and armies and the pagans that have overruled the land of Israel. The Messiah is supposed to bring justice and peace to the world and a new rule, a new way of governing God's people and God's world. Instead, Jesus has been healing the sick, and he has been casting out demons, and he has been calming storms and multiplying food to feed 5,000. And so Jesus asked them to sift through, to sort through all it is that they have been expecting of him with their experience of him, so that they might answer more faithfully the question of who he is. We too are asked this question. This is a continual question for us as we mature and grow in faith, as our experiences of God change, as we know Jesus more intimately and deeply. This question of who do you say I am? It is so easy to want certain things of Jesus. We want Jesus to bless our agendas, to make a way for the things that we believe should happen. But in that way, we are not always fully seeing who Jesus is. And so we must keep sifting through our expectations of Jesus. This Lent, a good question for us to be focused on is when Jesus asks us, "Who do you say that I am?" With his next words, Jesus is asking us not only to sift through who he is, but he is actually asking us to shift our understanding, to shift our focus onto who he is, for an understanding of who he is that is bigger than meeting our wants and meeting our desires. And so Jesus goes on to say in verse 23, "Then Jesus said to them, 'If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. For those who want to save their lives will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will save it. What does it profit them if they gain the whole world, but lose or forfeit themselves?'" This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. If you want to be my followers, you must deny yourself and take up your cross daily and follow me. This endeavor to follow Jesus requires intentionality, day in and day out. It is not a once and done decision. To follow Jesus means both to rely on Jesus for help in our personal needs, and it means asking for and responding to the needs of others. COVID has been hard on us and on all of the world. COVID has filled us with fear, with anger, with grief, with resentment, with shame, and with guilt. COVID has filled us with incredible stress as we feel that life is so out of control. Part of following Christ is to bring our feelings into our prayers. To pick up our cross is to move closer to him by moving closer to what all is part of the human experience, the joys and the huge challenges that we have been about. Much of what we experience when we experience the full range of human experience breaks our hearts. And part of what it means to follow Jesus is not to keep our hearts closed in, protecting who and what we are and what we have. To follow Jesus means to let our hearts be broken open so that our capacity to love others is expanded. Jesus asks us to shift our understanding, to reorient ourselves to more than what we know, to what it means to follow him into the kingdom, to do what he does, to resist the temptations that he resisted when he was in the wilderness. Jesus resisted 3 things that are ever before us, which daily we must reflect upon. Jesus was tempted that he could have all money, so that he could buy whatever he wanted, that he could keep himself in whatever level of comfort and luxury was satisfactory to him. And Jesus said, that was not what gives us life. Jesus was also tempted to have all power so that things were done the way that he wanted them to be done. All he had to do was worship Satan, the deceiver, the liar. And Jesus said that he would not do that power, force, building, taking over armies, that was not his way. And yet we so often struggle with that in terms of who we want to force to act in certain ways, our coworkers, our children, and we must face that temptation head on. Jesus was also tempted with fame, that he would be known as great and wonderful. And Jesus said instead that our call is to serve one another, that our fame is not because we are well known, but because we do what is good on behalf of God and on the kingdom and for the kingdom. And so this Lent, we are giving you a brochure that you can find a link to, Lenten micro-practices, 1 to 2 sentences that focus on the temptations, that focus on the ways in which we need to keep reorienting ourselves. These will be on Facebook and on Instagram, and we hope that we can have a lively conversation with one another as we follow these practices of drawing closer to Christ. On Ash Wednesday, we come to remember that we are mortal, that our lives will end, and therefore we want our lives to be lived with purpose. And so we come to confess our shortcomings. We come to confess our deep need for Christ to be at work in us. And we come confessing that we might indeed pick up our cross. Let us join in our prayer of confession together. Merciful God, in your gracious presence, we confess our sin and the sin of this world. Although Christ is among us as our peace, we are a people divided against ourselves as we cling to the values of a broken world. The profit and pleasures we pursue lay waste the land and pollute the seas. The fears and jealousies that we harbor set neighbor against neighbor and nation against nation. We abuse your good gifts of imagination and freedom, of intellect and reason, and have turned them into bonds of oppression. Lord, have mercy upon us. Heal and forgive us. Set us free to serve you in the world as agents of your reconciling love in Jesus Christ. If you are joining us for one of our times for ashes at 7:30, at 11:30, or 4:30, you may receive them at that time on your hand or your forehead. You may also, if you are unable to come, mark yourself with the sign of the cross. We come with ashes to remember that we are dust, and to dust we shall return, and to remember also that we are the beloved of God.
Sign us with ashes, merciful God. Children of dust, as to dust we return. Sign us with ashes, merciful God. Mark us and make us your own. Sign us with ashes, merciful God. Children of dust, as to dust we return. Sign us with ashes, merciful God. Mark us and make us your own. Sign us with ashes, merciful God. Children of dust, as to dust we return. Sign us with ashes, merciful God. Mark us and make us your own.
As you remember and confess your need for Christ, for his work within you, let your prayer be, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. May this be one of our prayers for this Lenten season. Let us begin a holy Lent.